Okay, so we're going to get started here. Uh, First of all, I put this picture up here. This is our dog doing yoga, and that's not really our dog, but I just like that picture. I thought it was kind of funny. Okay, this is just some demographic information, and my name is Dr. Robert Herman, for those of you who don't know me, and I'm in Bloomington here, and we've got website up there, email, however you want to contact me is fine if you need to. Okay, so there are some objectives that we're going to try to cover today. First of all, we live in a toxic world. This can have significant impact on our health. Now, this talk came about because within a week period of time, I had 3 patients come in that said that they were going on a detox, and I said, "Well, that's great. What are you detoxing?" And they kind of had a funny look on their face, and they said, "Well, I'm not really sure." And I said, "Well, how are you doing that?" And I got everything from just eating watermelon to, some kind of a concoction that they got somewhere. And so I thought it would be a good idea to get some information together on exactly the science of how your body detoxifies things and what it's detoxifying, and to give some more information on that. So the best way to deal with toxins is to remove them in the diet and to replace them with healthy food. Detox is best performed by consistently eating healthy. Diets don't work, fads don't work, grandma's concoction won't work. This includes organic, grass-fed, locally grown food, leafy greens, vegetables, and fruit. We're going to review proteins and fats and how they work. We're not going to do sugars because of time constraints. We're going to talk about how your body scientifically gets rid of toxins. We're going to talk about the importance of the bacteria in your gut, what's called the gut biome, and its relationship to diet and leaky gut and to toxicity. And then we're going to talk about genetic testing, because the new information coming out over the past, 3-4 years on genetics blows my mind, and I think it's really neat stuff, and it definitely affects your health. So we're going to talk about that. So first of all, what are you detoxifying? These are some of the questions that are going to come up in this talk, and we're going to try to answer these. And what health problems are caused by detox issue? What are you trying to get rid of when you're detoxifying? What foods are good for detox? Why can some people eat anything and others can't eat anything? So some people, they can go to McDonald's on a fairly regular basis and seem to eat pretty crappy food and they get away with it. Other people, they eat something just a little bit out of the ordinary from what they're not used to, and they get sick from it. So why is that? Why can some people eat anything but other people can't? Other people cannot eat anything, and or they get sick. What are we detoxifying? On the left-hand side here, we've got environmental toxins. These are things that are exogenous, and they are out in the environment, and they can get into our body. And when things like that happen, your body goes to work to get rid of them. POPs, or POPs, persistent organic pollutants. That includes any kind of man-made chemical like pesticides, industrial chemicals. Glyphosate is probably the biggest one that you hear about. Excuse me. Glyphosate is Roundup, and it is sprayed on a lot of the food that we eat to kill bugs and to kill weeds. And alcohol and drugs, when you take a medication, your body goes to work to get rid of it. Food additives like artificial chemicals, heavy metals, mercury, lead, arsenic, aluminum, microorganisms, your body has to get rid of those. Once it kills them, it has to detoxify them. Plastic, BPA, bisphenol A, these are endocrine disruptors, and you're hearing more and more about this all the time. But when you eat something or drink something that's in plastic, you get little nanoparticles of plastic into your body, and your body has to deal with that. If you're microwaving food, the content of the plastic is a lot higher, so you want to make sure you don't heat things in plastic. And then PCBs, polychlorinated biphenyls, they were banned in the 1970s, but they're still very persistent in the environment from when they were being used in the 70s. Smoking, things like that, your body has to deal with that. On the right side are the endogenous chemicals that you have to detoxify. These are hormones like estrogen, dopamine. When you have stress and you have adrenaline released or cortisol released, then your body has to detoxify that. Your body is constantly detoxifying, particularly hormones. And so if you're under stress, you see a bear coming at you and you take off running, or you fight the bear, and you're under that fight or flight mechanism, then your body has to bring those levels of adrenaline down, and it does that through detoxification. Enzymes, when you have two chemicals that come together, they may not react for a long time unless you have an enzyme. You bring the correct enzyme into the picture, and that chemical reaction can happen in a nanosecond. And so your body makes enzymes for chemical reactions in your body, and those enzymes have to be detoxified once they're used. Dead tissue has to be detoxified. And when you eat protein, what's left over after you metabolize protein is ammonia, urea, and uric acid. And your body has to get rid of that through the urine. That's part of detoxification. When you metabolize fat, ketones are what's left over, and you have to get rid of the ketones through the urine. So your body is constantly detoxifying, and there are things that we can do, that you can do, to help that process of detoxification. So the things that you can do are, of course, reduce pesticides and preservatives in food. That will help to relieve some of the stress on your liver. And if you lower the toxins, you will naturally be eating better foods. You can reduce exposure in personal care products. For instance, hair products have chemicals in them if you read the labels. Also, for instance, deodorant has aluminum in it, or antiperspirant rather. So you want to pay attention to that and see if you can reduce your exposure in your personal hair products. No plastic water bottles, no microwaving plastic, no storing food in plastic. That gets those nanoparticles of plastic into your food. Use glass to store your food, and find a glass container that you can carry water around in. And you want to filter your water. The Zero Water, it's a good water filter. It has a little measurement in there that measures, or a little instrument that measures dissolved solids. And if you just get your tap water, most tap water will be 200 or so. I'm not sure what the unit is, but 200 as far as dissolved solids. You put it through the Zero Water, and you can show that it's down to zero on the Zero Water. So eat grass-fed, locally grown meat whenever possible. If a cow is out in the field, it's going to be a happy cow. It's not going to be in a warehouse with that never sees the light of day, where they have to use a lot of antibiotics and a lot of things just to keep the animal healthy and alive. And so we want our cows to be grass-fed, locally grown whenever possible, and hopefully they're eating organic food whenever possible. And you want to count toxins, not calories. If you count the toxins and get the toxins down in your food, you're naturally going to be eating better food. You're going to be eating whole fruits and vegetables, and that is going to definitely fill you up more, but it's going to be limiting the toxins, and you're going to be limiting your calories naturally. These are some of the products that you should be looking on labels that can get into your food, that they add to your food, and you want to avoid monosodium glutamate, high fructose corn syrup. Definitely you don't want that. Trans fat, those are big ones that you just want to keep out of your diet. If you have some type of autoimmune disease like rheumatoid arthritis, arthritis or lupus or psoriatic arthritis, you want to avoid gluten. Even if you don't show that you're sensitive for gluten, it's a good thing to avoid. And anything that sounds like a chemical, try to keep it out of your diet. Health problems that are related to detoxification problems. You can read through those, but chronic pain, irritable bowel syndrome, IBD and IBS, autoimmune disorders, mood disorders, brain fog, metabolic syndrome, which is pre-type 2 diabetes. Those are all things that types of health problems that can be caused by detoxification issues. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go through some of the macronutrients, particularly protein and fats, because you really do need a basic understanding of how your body makes proteins, and you need a basic understanding of fats. Like I said, we're not going to be going through carbs today just because of the time issue, but we're going to go through proteins and fats. So proteins are enzymes, hormones, structure in your body, like muscle. These are all proteins, and your body makes all of those. It makes enzymes and hormones, and your proteins are the workhorse of the cell. They do all the work in the cell. So the proteins, I would say by far, are the most important chemical in your body. And proteins are amino acids that are strung together like beads on a necklace. So that top part, amino acid after amino acid, if you think of that as just all strung together into one long bead, that's what a protein is. The average protein is 150 amino acids long. It's estimated that there are 10,000 proteins, different proteins in the body, but nobody knows for sure exactly how many different types of proteins there are. The longest one they found so far is 34,000 amino acids long. That's a protein that's in your muscle. But the thing about proteins is those amino acids that are strung together, they have to be put together in a very specific order. So if an amino acid is out of order in there or it's missing, then that's a problem. That enzyme or that hormone just won't work quite as well. So it's very specific how it is strung together. These are the amino acids that your body uses. There are 20 amino acids. The ones on the left are essential. You need to get those in your diet. Your body cannot make those amino acids. The ones on the right can be produced mostly by the liver. And notice particularly methionine and cysteine on the top. Those are sulfur amino acids, and those are important for this talk because those are involved in detoxification. Sulfur is very important in detoxification. We're going to see why that is here in a little bit. But these are the amino acids that your body strings together to make proteins. So this is an example of a hemoglobin protein. And it doesn't look like it, but that molecule or that representation of a molecule on the left is one long string of amino acids that are strung together, and it's about 150 amino acids long. So it's taken and your body strings those into one long string, like I said, like beads on a necklace, and then it takes it and folds it into a very specific configuration. And that's what that is. That's a representation of it on the left-hand side, and then the structure of myoglobin is on the right-hand side. This is an example of another protein. So you can see proteins are very complicated. If this was an enzyme, the enzymatic activity where that reaction would take place between two other molecules probably happens inside the center of that, and the outer parts will attach onto the molecules, and then within a nanosecond it just instantaneously reacts. And so proteins are very complicated and very fascinating. So how does your body make those 10,000 proteins? How is that possible? That your body can string those together and fold them into a very specific configuration? Well, if you remember back in high school, DNA, which is represented on the left-hand side there, is the double helix, and it has bases where the rungs of the ladder are. And those bases are adenine, guanine, thymine, and cytosine. And so on the right-hand side, we've taken that DNA and we've untwisted it. And so that's what it looks like in this representation. So if you look at the, on the right-hand side, you'll see on top the ACGTACC. So let's suppose that it worked where one amino acid attached on to one base called adenine. And because DNA is the code for how your body knows which amino acid to put onto the chain next. DNA is the code. It codes for all those 10,000 proteins that your body makes. So let's suppose that one amino acid will attach onto the A and one amino acid attaches onto the C. Well, that won't quite work because there are 4 bases, but there are 20 amino acids. So that's not going to work. So how does your body do it? Does it take one amino acid and attach it onto 2 of these base pairs? Is that how it does it? But that won't work either because that still isn't enough for the 20 amino acids that you have. The way your body does it is it takes 3 of these base pairs and it attaches an amino acid onto those base pairs. And those 3 amino acids are called a codon. And so a codon is a code of 3 base pairs that will attach to one amino acid, a very specific amino acid. So your body takes this DNA that's in each one of your cells and it opens it up and it copies it, and then where there are each codon, an amino acid gets attached onto that codon. So when you hear about the DNA code, this is what the code is. You know, everybody knows about DNA being helping us to transmit traits from one generation to another. But on a daily basis, at every second, your body is making proteins. And the example on the other slide we were using was ACG, right up on top here, ACG. And so if we go to ACG on the chart here, you can see the first letter right here. You can see the first letter is A. The second letter is C. So we bring that down. It's somewhere in this area. And then the third letter is G. So if we go over, we see ACG right here. And ACG will code for the amino acid threonine. And that's how your body does it. This is the genetic code that they deciphered in the 1950s. This is how your body makes proteins. So the reason I put this slide up is because I need to explain to you what a gene is. If you look at the top bar there, that's the DNA. That's your DNA. And we've talked about the codons. Well, those codons are in the DNA, and several of them are together. So there might be 9 or 10 codons in that little area of DNA right through there. And so that is called an exon. An exon are a group of codons. So as you're going along in the DNA, you've got exon here, exon there, and there's in between here is what are called introns. Introns are regulatory mechanisms for the DNA. But your body has to get rid of those introns. So what it does is it makes a copy of the DNA after it untwists it, and then it takes this nano machine called a spliceosome, and it attaches it onto the DNA, and it does a cut and paste job, believe it or not. And it takes out the introns and takes those exons, and it attaches them together into one long exon with long codons. and then it translates and adds the amino acids, and then you have your protein. That's how it works. Very complicated process, very amazing process. Now, what a gene is a segment of DNA that codes for a particular protein. So a segment of DNA is part of your DNA that codes for a specific protein. DNA in humans is 3.2 billion base pairs long. So this particular length or segment of DNA on the top here might code for 2 or 3 different types of proteins, because in the spliceosome your body can mix those and move exons from one area over to the other side. So it can mix them up and make different types of proteins with that. Pretty amazing. Okay, so what happens when you have a base pair that's not correct? What happens if this A is a C or a T or an A? Well, first of all, that's what makes you different from the person sitting next to you. That's because everybody's DNA is a little bit different. So those little SNPs, and it's estimated that people have about 1 million different SNPs out of those 3.2 billion base pairs. So a SNP is when there's one nucleotide that's different from the other, or how it's supposed to be, or what it generally is. And those mutations, or those SNPs, they can cause a problem if it is coding for an enzyme that is used, for example, for detoxification, or for whatever it is that protein's being used for. It's a little different. Maybe it doesn't fold correctly because of the SNP that's in there. And the SNP is SNP, they pronounce it SNP, and it stands for single nucleotide polymorphism. And so that's just when one of these letters is different. It's like a mutation. Okay, so this is a report that we do or can do to see what your SNPs are. And I know this is hard to read, but there are probably 50 SNPs on this person on this page, and on this person that it's approximately 50 pages. So there's a lot of SNPs on this person, and if you look, and that's okay, that's normal. But if you look at up top here, this is for methylation, methionine, homocysteine pathway. That's a major detoxification pathway, and it's a pathway that helps with inflammation. And so a SNP in this area, under particular areas of the gene, can be a problem for why that person is not detoxifying like they normally would. For instance, if we've got on top here, this gene right here, it's 2 negatives. The risk allele for this one, they know, is if there's an A there. And so this person has 2 Gs. So the one below it is probably a better example. The risk allele is C, and they have 2 Cs. One from each parent, one from the mother, one from the father. So you can see that's in red, and that's so that means that it's that they have that SNP, and so then you can go to the research, and you can show, well, if they have this SNP, how are they detoxifying? Are they having trouble detoxifying this or that or the other? And that's how SNPs work, and that's. So what happens on these reports is you go to 23andMe or Ancestry.com, you have your DNA tested, and then you get the information and download it onto a flash drive. We put it into another program that will generate this report, and then we interpret it according to the latest scientific information on what SNPs do. This is called a variant report. These are some of the things that SNPs can affect. Liver detox, yeast and alcohol metabolism, the one we just showed you, methylation and methionine, homocysteine pathways, neurotransmitters, serotonin and dopamine can cause mood disorders. Glutamate and GABA, they are also neurotransmitters. COMT, MAO, and MTHFR genes are genes that help to detoxify particularly hormones. Mitochondrial function, Alzheimer's, your immune system, whether you're allergic to certain foods, clotting factor, celiac, gluten, thyroid. These are the ones that they focus on, but there are more. It's important to remember that genes and SNPs are not destiny. If you have a lot of SNPs in a certain area, it doesn't mean that that's just the way it is. You have to live that way. Genes are the gun and lifestyle is the trigger. There are epigenetic factors like diet and lifestyle that can play a much more important role than genes. So if you come back with a lot of SNPs, it doesn't mean there's nothing you can do. It just means that you have to change and you have to focus a little more on supporting that pathway, either with supplements or with diet. And so it's not, genes are not destiny. Okay, so a summary of proteins. They are chains of amino acid. They're the workhorse of the cell. Enzymes, hormones, structure. They are encoded in your DNA on how to make those proteins. And genes are not destiny. Okay, so this is a picture of a mitochondria. And I think this would be a good place to just take a 5-minute break. We've been going about a half an hour here. And so let's just take a quick 5-minute break so everybody can get up and stretch a little bit. So we'll see you in 5 minutes.